being able to sympathize with that, understand what it's like not to be able to hear, to have, and the thing is not to have control. It's like, if you think you really control the things that happen in your life, great, good for you, but I know better. Life is going to take over, and you're just going to have to deal with it. And I've been doing that all my life.
Welcome to Clicks and Bricks Podcast. We talk about the entrepreneur mindset, everything from that Main Street brick and mortar to that billion-dollar manufacturer. Be sure to head over to clicksandbricksacademy.com so you can access all the resources to start improving your sales today.
Today we've got Bill Rothrock. He is an inspirational story. I'm super excited to bring him and introduce him to the audience. But before we get started, if you'd like to join my text line community, it's 314-370-2871. Just send me any question you'd like about business or technology, and I'll send you an absolutely unbiased, free answer, no charge at all. Once you join my text line community, you'll get one, maybe two text messages a month about business, technology, and cryptocurrency. How are you doing today, Bill?
Great, Ken. How are you doing?
Super excited to have you on the show today and just having a great day in general.
I'm glad to be here.
Good. So can you tell the audience a little bit about who you are and what it is that you do for a living?
I'm a settlement consultant, and what I do is I help injured clients and their attorneys navigate the financial world post-settlement. So if somebody has a mal case or a personal injury case, car accident case, I would be the gentleman that would be called in during mediation to help settle the case and then work them through how to use the money post-settlement.
Fantastic. So you're going to help them figure, these are windfall cash moments for people, right? They work their job, they're used to this money coming in regularly, but now they have some unforeseen incident that happened that probably put a setback, and now they got a windfall of cash, and that's overwhelming to a lot of people. What are some of the pitfalls that somebody should watch out for when they get a large cash settlement like that?
The first thing is really think about what your future looks like, because the money is so overwhelming to most people when you talk about millions of dollars. But when you talk about it in the context of having to support an entire lifetime, it's not that much. Injured people have a lot of the same problems that professional athletes have. They're not used to handling money, which they have to learn. Number two, they have family members that may not have a lot of funds, so they'll have needs. And their own generosity will really get them in trouble if they don't have someone like me to help them through the process.
Fantastic. So, and I don't really understand totally the environment that you're in. You're an independent consultant for a larger firm, but you're your own business as well. Is that correct?
Correct.
Can you explain that a little bit to the audience?
So the Brad Hickey is, in a sense, I guess, my broker-dealer. They're my insurance agent. They hold all the licenses to be able to sell to the major life markets like AIG, New York Life, Pac Life, MetLife. And so all they do is process the paperwork and the commissions that come through and give me a 1099 at the end of the year. So they're like my back office administrator.
Fantastic. So you're an entrepreneur, you're in charge of everyday stuff. You've got to get your clients, you've got to bill them, all those things. But the products and services that you sell are backed by a larger umbrella company.
Correct.
Fantastic.
Correct.
Now, you were in the banking industry before you decided to make the jump and be an independent broker, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell the audience a little bit about what that transition was like and what motivated you to leave the comfort of a job with a paycheck and insurance, and now you're an independent broker where every single day you've got to find the motivation to get up and do the work without the threat of a boss writing you to do that work?
Well, I had the added benefit. My father was an entrepreneur, and I went to work at the bank because I thought that was what I wanted to do with my degree. Going to school for accounting and finance, I was geared to go towards this route. And ultimately, the major reason why I left the bank and went over to the personal side was exactly that. I wanted to have a more personal contact with the client. And it was very, very difficult, if not possible, to have at a large bank.
Okay. And I don't know about the rest of the world, but I've seen a drastic change in banking over the last 10 years, where I used to go to the bank. I knew my teller. I knew her name by name. She would come to my business and we would talk about stuff. Sometimes, they'd even do cash receipts for me. It was a really good relationship. But now the banking industry is kind of cumbersome and weird almost, where I don't know anybody that works at the local branch anymore. So I definitely understand that personal approach that you were looking for. We talk a lot about on Clicks and Bricks adversities that entrepreneurs come to and the mindset of entrepreneurs. And you've got an adversity story that's out of this world. Do you mind sharing with the audience about, your childhood and the adversities that you had to overcome? Because you're telling me today that English is your second language, and I couldn't tell it all when we met, but you've got a pretty wild story that I think, a lot of people would give up on, but you found a way to continue to move forward and strive and not just strive, but thrive inside your marketplace. Do you mind sharing the audience a little bit about that story?
Not at all, Ken. And, if it could help, that's great. I grew up in an age when, there weren't any educational plans. So you want to keep that in mind. So when I was about 5, my grandfather had watched me jump. My mother grabbed me and he was wondering, what's wrong with this child? And what ended up being found was at that point I was deaf or profoundly deaf. I probably could hear something, but I couldn't hear the spoken language. And so my first language is actually being able to read lips. And so that's how I watched TV. That's how I talked to my parents, was able to respond. And then, because of that event with my grandfather being observant enough, I had 18 ear operations from the time I was 5 to the time I was 18.
A lot.
So in that time, the PEDS unit was a unit where not only were people in there for tonsillectomies, but they were in there for cancer, for burns, for you name it. There was all kinds of injuries there. And one of the things that, I was feeling kind of bad about myself. I would think at the time I had like my 6th or 7th surgery and woe is me kind of thing. And then it finally dawned on me that some of the friends that I had made were not going to leave the hospital. And some of them did not make it into their teens. They didn't go on their first date. They didn't have all the life experiences that I've had to date. So, and woe is, Eeyore or the woe is me does absolutely nothing for anyone other than stop you from achieving what it is you want to in life.
So when was it that did you have like a moment where, I can hear it? Or was it this gradual over 18 surgeries? That's a lot, right? That's a lot to deal with. I've only had, I don't know that I've had 18 surgeries in my whole life, much less on one specific thing, right?
I've had a bunch. I don't recommend it. Was there it wasn't like you see the baby on, all of a sudden put a hearing aid in or put a cochlear implant. It's like the baby's for me, it was more gradual because they were slowly correcting some of the mechanical issues that I had. It was stopping me from being able to hear. Because mine's not a nerve damage. Mine is conductive. So I was getting the signal from my brain to my ears, but I wasn't being able to capture that because my eardrums were bad and my station tubes didn't.
So it was a mechanical issue, not an electrical issue. Right?
Correct.
So
correct.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Right.
Well,
so
I still have plenty of, I still have plenty of electrical issues up top. They had nothing to do with my ears.
Fantastic. So how much of that tenacity and overcoming adversity do you accredit today to your ability to run your business?
100%.
100%. That's a big percentage.
100% in two very distinct ways. One, as I said, Eeyore doesn't no one any good. no one was going to, give me the education I needed. So I had to figure a way to adapt, to change me. The world around me wasn't going to change. I needed to change if I were going to survive. And that's number one. The other thing was the empathy that I was able to garner from, one, feeling that amount of pain. I tried to explain to someone what it's like to get the side of your head cut open 18 times. I don't know if I really can, and also I saw the life pain of young lives being snuffed out from major diseases, children that were being, burnt or pots of water dumped on their head because their parents were crazy, I guess, or whatever. So I saw the unsavory side of life, and it really made me very empathetic. So those two things really dictate how I work and what I do and what I try to accomplish as a professional.
Yeah, I know that, one of the things that I've been really practicing on learning recently is gratitude. And it's hard because all these things like our hearing and our breath and our smell and all of our senses that we take them for granted because we have them and we've had them our entire lives. But we wouldn't trade them for $1 million any day of the week, right? I would never trade my hearing for any amount of money, or my smell or my sight or my feel. So, I think that ability to be grateful for those simple things is really where people can find happiness in the world. And I think every day waking up being happy is one of those key factors that you need to really strive in business, right?
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. I think unfortunately, if the Curious Life of Benjamin Button, have you ever seen the movie?
I've seen parts of it. I don't think I've ever sat down and watched the whole thing all the way through.
And unfortunately, what ends up happening is, in our life, we live it the way it's supposed to, and he lived it backwards, right? And I kind of lived a little bit more backwards because I had that really large problem happening early, right? But most of us who are, quote unquote, I guess, normal or have a normal life, don't really realize the limitations that we have or that are going to happen physically. So we don't really appreciate, being able to go up and down stairs we take for granted. And a lot of my clients, they were driving down the road and now they're quads, and all those things are taken away. So being able to sympathize with that, understand what it's like not to be able to hear, to have, and the thing is not to have control. It's like, if you think you really control the things that happen in your life, great, good for you, but I know better. Life is going to take over, and you're just going to have to deal with it. And yeah, I've been doing that all my life.
For me, I've found multiple times in my life to where I stopped being grateful for the world around me, right? And it happens. Yes. I've had a couple of near-death experiences, and my gratefulness for life is at its peak right after those, right? But it kind of dwindles over time. Do you have any tips or tricks on how do you maintain that mindset when you're, this was a long time ago, you were 18 years old when your last surgery happened for your hearing. Now that's been a long time. How do you keep that mindset of gratefulness and appreciation and empathy for long periods of time? Because I know for me, and I'm sure if I have this problem, a lot of people have this problem, that as time goes on, the wounds heal and life goes on, and those kinds of things get less and less important to you. How do you keep in that mindset?
Well, I think it's become an ingrained part of who I am. And I think part of that is, and I don't know if it's, early childhood education or whatever. I think that things that happen to you when you're young like that become somewhat more grooved into your personality. As you get older, I think it's harder to change that. So if you're going to try to do it when you get older, I think what you really have to do is post it someplace that you see in the morning, and make sure that you sit down for a couple of minutes every day and just go, okay, what were the good things that happened to me? Because we have a tendency to really focus on the negative if you think about it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I know for me, it happens to me all the time, and it's hard, right? But I know so deeply that if I can keep my mindset right, that all the rest of the world kind of just plays out for me pretty well, right? But if
Right.
I'm in a bad mood, then my employees don't work as hard, and that's always my fault, right? Because if I came in and I motivated them better, or I was a nicer person, then they would work harder. So I know that my mindset plays a lot in how I deal with it, and it's really easy. This episode's going to air late January of 2022. So
Okay.
we're just outside of the holidays, and the holidays are a really tough time for me personally. And I know I lose focus on a lot of my mindset stuff in that time. I use meditation a lot to help me. And, I've got these mantras that I constantly say, but I know at times of holidays and other times that are more stressful, I tend to let those go. And, everybody in my life tends to see that pretty quickly when it happens. So,
Okay.
Being young and having that adversity at that young of an age, I think is, unfortunately that you had to go through that, but maybe it's the superpower that you have today that keeps you going because if you're in business, and I don't care what business you're in, you're
Right.
going to have times that you don't think that you can overcome the task that's in front of you. You think that
Right,
hurdle's
right.
too big. You think,
Yep.
all kinds of things. You're going to have self-doubt, and you've got to figure out how to remove that self-doubt, pull in that confidence, and move forward. And you got to do that time and time again. And it's hard to do. So having it ingrained at a young age, I think is a phenomenal thing. But I don't think you're probably giving yourself enough credit for your mindset tactics that you use on a daily basis.
Well, I mean, I'm not saying that I'm not attacked by, oh God, periodically, but
Right.
But at the end of the day, if I'm not putting myself out there and letting my knowledge flow and making myself available and doing what it takes to build my business, then I have nothing. If I go out there and I put myself forward, and I think, you bring this around, I think the hardest thing for people to be is vulnerable.
It's challenging.
And, right? It's like, you have to, I reach out to a new client. Every time I sit down with a new injured party or a new attorney, I'm vulnerable. I'm exposing myself. They could say they don't want me. And I can take that personally, and sometimes I do. More along the lines that I know if they don't use what I say, it's going to hurt them long term. But I continue to do that, and I don't feel bad, about it when it doesn't work. But I'm constantly vulnerable. I like my vulnerable space because that's where I grow. That's where I learn. Even coming on to something like this and talking in front of a bunch of people that I have never met before. Right. Here I am. I have a story. I think it matters. I think I can help people. I love helping people.
Absolutely.
So, but if I weren't vulnerable enough, to expose myself to come here and do this, then they're never going to hear this story.
Right. And this is a story of a deaf kid that had a whole bunch of surgeries, but now runs his own business and is in charge of his own destiny. So, which is, I think, by definition, the American dream. Right. So yep. I applaud you for doing everything you do, and the world needs, more people like you in it. But so talking more about your business, going back to, Rothrock Settlement Consulting, if somebody who would be your client?
Well,
on a high level, right? So obviously,
On the high level, the plaintiff is ultimately my first client.
Okay.
And for listeners, I hope you don't need me. I really don't, because if you do, normally something really bad has happened.
Right.
But anyone who's listening to this, if you're injured in an accident or a medical malpractice case or something along those lines, reach out and find a settlement consultant like myself before you even contact an attorney. Get your medical stuff taken care of. And reach out to one of us.
So you're the advocate for the person that had an injury, falsely accused of something, in an accident, whatever. You're their advocate, even
Correct.
Before the attorney.
And I think we should be. This is where I'm transitioning my business a little bit. And the reason is no one understands or knows which attorneys are good and which attorneys are bad.
And they all specialize in very specific stuff generally.
Correct. And if you're calling sometimes you can and sometimes you can't, but if you're calling the person that's, on the billboard or the one that's advertising all the time, that may not be the best attorney for your case.
Right.
However, I work with all kinds of attorneys and I can get you to the best attorney for your particular case.
Right. Now, in your line of business, is it something you're licensed in every state in the country or just specific states? So you can work with anybody in the country?
Anywhere in the country.
All right. And if somebody wanted to work with you specifically, how would they get in contact with you?
Reach out. You posted my webpage right there. My number's there. They can reach out and they can call me at any time.
Right. And that's WilliamRothrock.com.
Correct. And there's a page in there that talks about what happens with the plaintiff, what the structured settlement is, what my planning services are. But ultimately, at the end of the day, when someone's injured, you're combining the injury, the limitation that comes along with that. They lose their contact with their peers. And now they're getting a lump sum of money that's supposed to support them for the rest of their lives. And they get one bite at the apple, Ken. They only get one. And if it goes wrong, it doesn't happen again. And now all the other problems are still there. I help educate them on how to make that money work exactly the way it needs to.
Absolutely. And that's a valuable service. And anytime that anybody's been through that, I know I have, it's not fun by any stretch of the imagination. You got a lot of bills to pay off and you got to negotiate all those bills because they're all negotiable, right? Every bill in the world is a negotiable bill. I promise you. After the service has been rendered, it's negotiable, I promise. But fantastic. So moving on, we like to talk about technology, right? Because this is Clicks and Bricks. We believe that forever there will be online activity and the brick and mortar activity. But technology is changing the way we live at breakneck speeds today. Either specifically to your industry or just in general, what excites you about technology moving into the future?
Well, the first thing for me right now, by communicating with you, I can reach 1 million people in a heartbeat. We could never do that. So if you have the right idea or the right concept or the right solution, I always believe it's a solution. If you have the right solution, then you can get it out there and you can help a lot more people than you ever could before we had the internet. The downside of that, I think, though, is that if you're in a job where the intellectual property can be moved offshore, then you need to think about what your next job's going to be.
Absolutely. And I would even argue, go deeper on that. Forget about if your job can be offshore. If you have an objective position today, meaning if your job is highly defined, then it can be automated away. And you've got to figure out a way to be more creative in your workflow today. Because stuff that's the same 10 steps every time, they can automate that now pretty well, right? So those jobs are going to go away more and more and more over time. I think, it's scary. I'm really, really happy about the technology movement, but I don't know how our political landscape is going to keep up with it, right? Because there's going to be a lot of changes as there's less jobs available for people because there's just less need.
Well, you remember when Citizens, net neutrality came out?
Yes.
Right. And if you really wanted one legislative action that occurred to really sum up the problem between corporate America and the political will being at odds, when they turned down the internet as being a social good, that said everything you needed for it to say right there.
Yeah, the internet today is kind of sad for me, unfortunately. I grew up with the internet. I'm an early adopter, so I've been on the internet since, the mid 90s. And I remember a time where there was not a lot of websites online and then the boom, and there was all these different websites. You could go to like different places online all the time is exciting, right? You can talk to different kinds of people in different chat rooms and different groups and all this stuff. But it seems today like there's only a handful of sites left. So it seems that in the internet world, winner took most. And that's kind of sad. Whereas, you know, you lose the brick and mortar Main Street competition pretty quickly. But I think on the brick and mortar side, as we get more experience related and brick and mortar business owners love what they do so much that they're going to find new experiences that bring people in the door. So I'm not too worried about that long term. But today it is definitely a concern. And, you know, we need some really smart kids that can come up and take on Googles and Amazons. Right. And that's what capitalism's all about.
Well, and the unfortunate thing in the legislative system is that the only way you break that power is by destroying monopolization. And when you have, you know, Citizens United, which allows corporate America to basically buy all the influence they ever wanted and don't hold any of the responsibility of being, you know, part of society. I mean, you know, at one point, you know, the stakeholders of a corporation were the owners of the corporation, the employees of the corporation, and the society in which those corporations existed. You know, during the 80s and 90s, that transitioned to the stakeholders, the person who owns stock, and that's it. And we've seen what the ultimate outcome of that is. Well, but I think you're absolutely right. You know, the technology is going to eliminate all those onesie twosie things that are, you know, process oriented, that are going to go away. And, you know, that means our educational system needs to change. But we have a whole generation that doesn't know how to put a light bulb.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's scary stuff.
Right. And so my dad was a tradesman. I got my union card when I was 15 years old.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Served my apprenticeship by the time I was 18. And so my hands, you know, work very, very well. But most people are just not handy, you know, and that's, and, you know, once again, I think that, you know, one of the things that has made me successful or able to continue to transition and do different things is I'm just not afraid. I started with nothing. I couldn't hear anything. I was like, okay, I got nothing. Okay, well, I'll try that. So I continue. The Lord loves a trier, I guess. And that's what I am.
Yeah, at some point it becomes a little cumbersome to keep trying over and over. I have that problem too. And I talk to my therapist. She's like, what are you doing? You're not an underdog anymore. You're successful. I'm like, no, I'm an underdog. I don't have all these things. She's like, no, you're fine. You big dummy. Just relax.
Yeah. Are you Irish by chance? Yeah. You got some Irish in you, you know?
Yeah.
But as far as the technology goes, so like I started out when there wasn't any. So I'm a little older than you. And then I went to RIT, which is Rochester Institute of Technology, and was instantaneously thrown into what, you know, technology was available at that time. And right now I'm sitting in front of 8 monitors and a home-built computer, you know, a specially designed computer. And I've had to continue to keep on that. And so if you're not willing to grow, and the pace of change now, you know, we went from no airplanes to Boeing 747s in a decade.
Right.
Well, we went from no internet in 1990 to 20 years later, we had everything and then some.
Right. Absolutely.
And so there's going to be a, you know, social commentary as well. I mean, how are we going to use this? What is it going to be used for? Who's going to control the content, right?
And society continues to change that narrative, what the internet's going to be used for, right? And this new internet 3.0 that we're on the brink of right now, we're, you know, for the people that are watching, if you're an entrepreneur and you want to get involved in something, I believe there's 2 drastic things that are happening right now. Internet 3.0 is coming out, and it's going to coming out at breakneck speeds. And I also believe that we're in right now the very beginning of the digital art renaissance that is going to be phenomenal over the next couple hundred years, I believe. So right now there's some really big changes in technology that are happening, and not necessarily new technology. It's just new ways to use existing technology.
And that's, that's an area. A matter of fact, I was watching something the other day. They were talking about getting the rights to photography or getting the rights to an image and then being able to sell that image. I will hold out whether or not it's art or not art to other people that are much brighter than I am.
Right.
And, but the thing is, like you were talking about digital currency, right?
Correct.
So for myself, I evaluate the value of securities, investment portfolios, right?
Right.
And at the end of the day, I love the idea of blockchain.
Yes.
I caution everyone on blockchain in the sense that realize that if you're going to allow digital currency to survive, that you're asking the central banks of the world to give up their currency or the primacy of their currency.
Yeah, unfortunately, the cat's out of the bag, and I don't think we're going backwards. You cannot put the toothpaste back in the tube now. It's out.
But they're going to try.
They're going to try. They absolutely are going to try.
They're going to try. And so what's the downside of that? What's that legislative action look like? Is it $120,000 Bitcoin, or is it $20,000 Bitcoin?
The only thing I'm willing to bet on is that being Americans, we're going to overcorrect just like we did in our last two elections. We're going to continue to overcorrect and go back and forth, and hopefully we find a nice middle ground. But it's going to be a long time. This is going to take a long, long time. But there's a lot of money to be made in this transition.
Yeah, but the thing is, anytime you can make a lot of money,
you can lose a lot of money.
You can lose a lot of money, and I as I caution people, I've lost $160,000 in less than a minute. So I can tell you that as being a trader as well, there's nothing as disappointing as being short put options on the S&P 500 when they call trading halt.
Yeah.
And so, and then you wake up and you're like, oh, hey, how you doing? That's great. That hurt.
Those are tough days.
Getting back to what it is I do, ultimately when I help the client, the injured party, or I help the attorney, I educate them on what the possible is, what reality really is. And if they do it, they do it. And if they don't, they don't. But at the end of the day, I can walk away and said to myself, you know what? I left that person in a better position. If they had taken my advice, I knew it would be guaranteed it was going to work. And if they don't, I'm just one man just trying to change my little piece of the universe.
Fantastic. All right, Bill, thank you so much for your time today. I had a blast talking with you about all these different scenarios in the world. Is there anything you would like to leave the audience with before we go?
If you're investing, remember, as good as things are is as bad as they get. People have a tendency to forget that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Bill, for your time today. I enjoyed it. I hope we get to talk again soon.
Hey, Ken, thank you very much for having me.
No problem.
It was a pleasure.
That's it for today's show, folks. Again, you can reach me at 314-370-2871. Send me any text message, any question about business, technology, or cryptocurrency, and I will send you an absolutely unbiased answer at no charge at all. Get to work.